My name is Sophia Carter. I'm 28 years old. And the strange thing about the moment your future quietly collapses is that it doesn't always come with raised voices or slammed doors. Sometimes it arrives folded neatly inside a manila envelope, placed gently on a cafe table between two people who still think they love each other. It was a Thursday afternoon, the kind where nothing feels urgent. Nothing feels like it's about to end. I was sitting at a small corner table, fingers wrapped around a warm cup of coffee, watching people drift in and out like background noise. Ethan had texted me earlier that morning. We need to talk about something important. I didn't panic. Why would I? We'd been together for 14 months, long enough to build routines, long enough to believe we were stable. Safe. I thought maybe he wanted to talk about moving in together. His lease was ending soon. We'd circled around the idea before, half-serious conversations, late-night hypotheticals. I remember even smiling to myself while I waited. That soft, quiet kind of happiness you don't question. Ethan arrived 10 minutes late. Not unusual. But something about the way he walked toward me felt rehearsed. Too deliberate. He was carrying a folder. A plain manila folder. That should have been my first warning. He sat down, leaned over, kissed my cheek like everything was normal. Hey, he said, casual. Easy. Too easy. We ordered food, his usual. Sandwich, soup, nothing out of place. He asked about my day. I asked about his. We performed normality like it was muscle memory. And then he slid the folder across the table, just like that. Sophia, he said, his voice softening slightly. I've been thinking about our future. Something in my chest tightened. Not fear. Not yet. Just awareness. I opened the folder, and that's when everything shifted. Loan documents. Thick, official, cold. $60,000. I blinked, flipping through the pages, trying to process what I was looking at. What is this? I asked, my voice quieter than I expected. Ethan leaned forward, eyes bright, too bright. You know how I've been talking about starting my boutique, he said, the online clothing brand? I nodded slowly. He had talked about it. Ideas, dreams, nothing concrete. I found an opportunity, he continued, excitement building. There's this wholesale connection through Vanessa. She's already successful in the space. And if I move fast, I can lock in exclusive distribution rights for this designer. I kept flipping. Numbers. Repayment schedules. Monthly payments. $1,100 a month. For 6 years. My stomach dropped. And? I asked carefully. He reached across the table and took my hand. I need a cosigner. There it was. Simple. Clean. Devastating. The bank approved me conditionally, he went on. But they want someone with strong credit, someone stable. His thumb brushed against my hand. Someone who believes in me. I slowly pulled my hand back. Not dramatically. Just enough to breathe. Ethan, I said, choosing my words carefully. This is a huge commitment. I know, he said quickly, but this is our chance, our future. Our future? I repeated. Yes, he said, almost impatient now. This isn't just about me. It's about us building something together. I looked back down at the documents. Where's your business plan? I asked. He frowned slightly. I don't need a formal plan, he said. I understand fashion. I have the vision. Vanessa's mentoring me. That's not the same thing as a plan. His expression shifted, just slightly, but I saw it, the softness tightening at the edges. You work part-time at the studio, I continued, my voice steady but firm. You've never run a business before. This isn't a small risk. This is exactly why I need your support, he cut in. There it was again. That shift. If you loved me, he said quietly, you'd believe in me enough to do this. The words hung between us. Heavy, calculated. And suddenly, everything felt different. I set the folder down slowly, took a sip of my coffee, even though it had gone cold. And in that moment, something inside me clicked. Not loudly, not dramatically, just clearly. You're right, I said. Relief flashed across his face too quickly. I don't love you that much. Silence, the kind that swallows everything. Even the noise of the cafe seemed to fade. Ethan blinked. What? I don't love you enough, I continued, my voice calm, almost detached, to risk $60,000 on something that has no structure, no plan, and no safety net. His face went through a series of expressions, confusion, anger, disbelief. But more than that, I added softly, I don't love the fact that you think love should look like this. Sophia, are you serious right now? He snapped. Completely. You're breaking up with me over money? No, I said, meeting his eyes. Over boundaries, over respect, over the assumption that loving someone means sacrificing your stability for their impulse. His jaw tightened. You're supposed to support me. I do, I said, just not blindly, not at my own expense. I stood up, left cash on the table, and for a second, just a second, I thought he might understand. He didn't. You're making a mistake, he said sharply. I paused, looked back at him, and for the first time, I saw him clearly. Not the version I loved, the version that expected, demanded, took. No, I said quietly. I think I'm finally fixing one. I walked out, didn't look back, didn't stop when he called my name, didn't answer when my phone started buzzing before I even reached my car. Ethan, Vanessa, his mother, message after message. How could you? Real partners support each other. You just threw away your future. I blocked them all before I even started the engine. Sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel, heart strangely calm. I thought that was the end of it. I really did. I was wrong. The next morning, I went to work determined to act like my life had not tilted off its axis. That was the first mistake, because people like Ethan do not hear no as an answer. They hear it as a delay, a challenge, a temporary misunderstanding they can overpower if they just keep pressing on the bruise until you give in. By 11:30, I was halfway through answering emails when our receptionist appeared beside my desk with the kind of expression people wear when they are trying not to step into someone else's disaster. Hey, she said carefully, there's someone in the lobby asking for you. I looked up. Who? She hesitated. He said he's your boyfriend. For one absurd second, my body reacted before my brain did. A hard, ugly drop in my stomach. Not fear exactly, more like the sensation of a door inside me being kicked open. I knew. Even before I stood up, I knew. When I reached the lobby, Ethan was there exactly the way I should have expected him to be. Dressed well, hair styled, jaw set in that carefully wounded expression he used whenever he wanted to seem misunderstood instead of manipulative. And he wasn't alone. Vanessa stood beside him. His ex-girlfriend. The same Vanessa he had presented the day before like some brilliant, successful mentor who was guiding him toward greatness. She looked polished, expensive, confident. The kind of woman who knew how to weaponize calm. I didn't let my face change. My workplace is not the place for this, I said evenly. Outside, now. I did not wait for an answer. I walked toward the front doors, and after a second, they followed. Out on the sidewalk, the air was cooler than I expected. Sharp. It made everything feel even more exposed. Vanessa started talking before Ethan did. I don't think you understand the opportunity here, she said, crossing her arms. The online luxury apparel market is expanding fast. Ethan has the right instincts. With the right backing, he could build something serious. I looked at her. Are you co-signing the loan? That stopped her. Not for long, but long enough. Her mouth tightened. No, my credit is tied up in other ventures. Then this conversation is pointless. Ethan exhaled sharply, like I was embarrassing him. Sophia, come on, he said. You're not even listening. I listened yesterday. No, you reacted yesterday, he said. There's a difference. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was so predictable. He stepped closer, lowering his voice like intimacy could erase reality. Baby, I know I came on too strong. I should have explained it better. I should have eased into it. But this is real. This is our chance to build something together. The word baby hit me harder than I expected. Not because it softened me, because it annoyed me. That effortless slide back into ownership, into familiarity, into the assumption that he still had access to me. We are not together, I said. He blinked, almost offended. You were upset. I was clear. You didn't mean it. I held his gaze. I meant every word. For a second, something cold passed over his face, the mask slipping. Not all the way, but enough. Vanessa gave a small scoff. Honestly, Ethan, forget it. Some women say they want ambitious men, but the second they have to support one... This has nothing to do with ambition, I cut in. It has to do with manipulation. Ethan's expression hardened. That's unfair. No, I said quietly. Showing up at my workplace the day after I ended things and bringing your ex-girlfriend to pressure me is unfair. His eyes flashed. Vanessa looked between us, annoyed now, like she had expected an easier win. I stepped back toward the door. This conversation is over. Do not come here again. Ethan stared at me, and there was something in his face then that unsettled me more than anger would have. Certainty. The calm certainty of someone who still believed he would get what he wanted in the end. This isn't over, he said. Then he turned and walked away. Vanessa followed. I stood there for a moment longer than I should have, pretending I was just getting air before going back inside. But really, I was trying to understand why his words felt less like drama and more like a promise. Saturday morning, my doorbell rang at 7:03 a.m. Not once. Repeatedly. Aggressively. The kind of ringing meant to drag you out of bed and punish you for making someone wait. Still half asleep, I checked the camera feed on my phone. Patricia, Ethan's mother. Of course. She stood on the other side of my door in a cream cardigan and expensive sunglasses, clutching her purse like she was arriving for a respectable family conversation instead of harassing her son's ex-girlfriend before breakfast. I didn't answer. I watched her ring again and again. Then finally sigh, pull something from her purse, and slide it under my door before leaving. I waited until her car was gone before opening it. The note was handwritten. Of course it was handwritten. The whole thing was dressed up in that polished, maternal tone women like Patricia use when they want cruelty to sound like concern. She wrote that I was destroying Ethan's future over fear, that good partners made sacrifices, that men with vision were rare and I would one day regret failing to stand beside him when he needed me most. There was one line in particular that sat in my chest like acid. You don't throw away a good man just because he asks you to believe in him. I read it twice. Then I tore it in half. Then again. Then I threw it away and stood in my kitchen staring at my coffee maker like it had personally betrayed me. Because the thing no one tells you about these moments is that even when you know you are right, there is still a small, wounded part of you that asks the question anyway. Was I too harsh? Was I cold? Was there a kinder way to do it? But every time those thoughts rose up, another memory followed them. Ethan's voice in the cafe. If you loved me, not would you consider this? Not can we talk through it? Not I understand if this feels too big. No, a test. A trap dressed like devotion. And I knew better than to confuse guilt with love. By that afternoon, the social media campaign had begun. It was subtle at first. That almost made it worse. Ethan posted a black and white quote on his story about how some people only support your dreams when they don't require sacrifice. Then another about betrayal, teaching you who really belongs in your life. Vanessa reposted one with a little broken heart emoji and the words, "Proud of you for still chasing what matters." His friends joined in. Then his family. No one said my name directly, but they didn't have to. The message was clear enough. Ethan was the dreamer. I was the woman too selfish to believe in him. If I had been younger, maybe it would have worked. Maybe I would have rushed to defend myself, to explain the truth, to drag private details into public view just to prove I wasn't the villain in someone else's story. But humiliation is often a better teacher than anger. I screenshotted everything. Every post, every comment, every implication. Then I put my phone down. Silence is sometimes the most dignified answer. But silence, I was about to learn, does not always make people stop. Sometimes it makes them escalate. Monday morning, I got a call from my bank. I almost didn't answer because I was in the middle of a meeting. But something in the caller ID made me step out into the hallway. The woman on the phone was polite, professional, calm in the way people are when they know they are delivering information that will ruin your day. She explained that someone had attempted to add an authorized user to one of my credit cards. My pulse went cold. What? They had your full address, she said, and enough identifying information to get through the early verification stages, but the request was flagged before any changes were made. I pressed a hand against the wall. What information? She listed it. My address, approximate income, my mother's maiden name. A detail I had mentioned once, casually, months earlier, while telling Ethan a story about how my mother had kept her name professionally after marriage. Such a tiny thing. The kind of detail you give away when you think you are safe. The kind of detail that turns poisonous in the wrong hands. The bank had stopped the request because additional verification failed. Nothing had gone through. But that wasn't the point. The point was that someone had tried. And I knew. I knew with the kind of certainty you feel in your bones before you can prove it on paper. I froze my credit before lunch, contacted all 3 bureaus, filed the first report that afternoon. The police officer I spoke to was sympathetic but practical. Without direct proof, there wasn't much they could do yet. But having documentation on file would matter if anything else happened. If anything else happened? I remember almost laughing at that, as if this story had any intention of calming down. Tuesday evening, I saw Liam at my gym. He waved like it was some happy accident. Like we were 2 acquaintances crossing paths instead of 2 people standing inside somebody else's scheme. Liam was one of Ethan's friends. Not close enough for me to know him well, but familiar enough that his appearance there felt immediately wrong. I had been going to that gym for nearly a year. I had never seen him once. Wow, he said, overly casual, falling into step beside me near the water station. Crazy running into you here. I gave him a look. He smiled too quickly. Then, without wasting much time, he delivered exactly what I knew he'd come to deliver. I heard about you and Ethan, he said. That's rough. I said nothing. He tilted his head, lowering his voice into something performatively sympathetic. He's really not doing well. He had to give up the apartment he was looking at. He's under a ton of pressure, honestly. I think he just needed you to believe in him." There it was again. That phrase, as if refusing financial self-destruction was some tragic failure of character. I tightened my grip around my water bottle. His financial problems are not my responsibility. Liam's face shifted, just a little. "Wow," he said. "That's kind of cold." "No," I said. "What's cold is sending other people to guilt me on his behalf." His eyes narrowed. For a second, I saw the real thing underneath the concern. Judgment. Maybe even contempt. Or maybe just irritation that the script wasn't working. He shrugged. Maybe he dodged a bullet. I almost told him the same could probably be said for anyone Ethan tried to drag into his mess. Instead, I walked away. Then I went straight to the front desk and told staff that if anyone connected to Ethan started showing up regularly or bothering me there, I wanted it noted. The woman at reception nodded immediately. That was the moment something shifted in me. Until then, some part of me had still been thinking in the language of breakup drama. Hurt feelings, emotional fallout, pettiness, reputation games. But normal breakup drama does not include attempted credit access, or workplace ambushes, or third-party pressure campaigns. This was something else, and naming it made it real. Wednesday night, Vanessa called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity has always been one of my weaker instincts. When I picked up, she didn't bother with pleasantries. "You need to know something," she said. I sat down slowly on the edge of my couch. "What?" A pause. Then, Ethan already signed for a loan. Everything inside me stilled. I thought he needed a co-signer. "He lied," she said flatly. "He got approved on his own. Horrible interest rate. Predatory level bad. He was trying to get you to co-sign a better loan so he could use that money to cover the first one." For a moment, I couldn't speak. My apartment was quiet around me. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes truth sound louder. "Why are you telling me this?" Vanessa let out a bitter breath. "Because he borrowed money from me, too. $5,000. Said it was for startup inventory. And I found out he spent part of it on a vacation to Miami last month." I closed my eyes. Of course he did. "I'm cutting ties," she said. "Completely. And I thought you should know this isn't about some dream business. He's drowning." There was no kindness in her voice, no apology, but there was something maybe more useful. Disillusionment. She had believed him once too. "Watch your back," she said, and hung up. I sat there for a long time after the call ended, not moving, not thinking in full sentences, just letting the truth rearrange everything. He had never come to me with a dream. He had come to me with a leak in the floorboards and expected me to become the bucket. And maybe the part that hurt most was not that he tried to use me. It was that he had dressed it up as love. That night, I opened a notes app on my phone and started building a timeline. Thursday, cafe, loan request, breakup. Friday, workplace confrontation. Saturday, Patricia at my apartment. Monday, attempted credit intrusion. Tuesday, Liam at the gym. Wednesday, Vanessa reveals prior loan, financial deception. I added screenshots, saved voicemails, archived messages. I told myself I was just being cautious, but the truth was simpler. Somewhere deep down, I already knew this was only the beginning. And I was right, because by the time I put my phone down that night, another notification was already waiting for me. One from my apartment management office. Someone had called earlier that day, claiming to be my husband. The email from my apartment management office came through at 9:17 p.m. Subject line, unusual request, lease verification. Even before I opened it, I felt it. That quiet, tightening pressure behind my ribs that had started showing up every time something new surfaced. I clicked. The message was polite, professional. But underneath it, there was something unmistakable. Concern. Someone had called earlier that day claiming to be my husband. My husband. I actually let out a short, disbelieving laugh when I read that line. Not because it was funny, because it was so completely detached from reality that for a second, my brain didn't know where to put it. The caller had asked for a copy of our lease agreement, claiming he had misplaced his copy. He'd had enough information to sound convincing, but not enough to pass verification. So they refused. And then, thankfully, they flagged it. I read the email twice, then a third time. Each time, the same conclusion settled deeper into place. Ethan wasn't just refusing to let go. He was rewriting reality and dragging me into it whether I agreed or not. That night, I barely slept. Every small noise in the hallway felt louder. Every creak of the building, every footstep outside my door, it all pressed against my nerves like something waiting to happen. By morning, I had already forwarded the email to my growing folder of documentation. Another entry. Another piece of proof. Another confirmation that this was escalating beyond anything I could handle casually. Thursday evening, it got worse. Around 8 p.m., I heard voices in the hallway. At first, I ignored it. Apartment buildings are full of noise. People coming and going, conversations echoing through thin walls. But then I heard my name. Clear, sharp, and familiar. I froze. Slowly, carefully, I moved toward my door and checked the camera feed. Ethan. Of course. But he wasn't alone. 2 men stood beside him. Mid-30s maybe, rough around the edges, the kind of people you don't ask questions about. You just hope they leave quickly. My pulse spiked. I turned up the volume. I lived here, Ethan was saying, his voice strained, almost desperate. My stuff is still inside. She locked me out. One of the men shook his head. Lady, we're locksmiths, not burglars. You don't have proof you live here. We're not touching that door. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustration bleeding into something sharper. You don't understand. She's keeping my things. I just need access. The second guy crossed his arms. Then you call the police. We're not getting involved in whatever this is. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Ethan's expression cracked. Not sadness. Not hurt. Anger. Raw, unfiltered. You're useless, he snapped. The men exchanged a look. Good luck, one of them muttered, before they both walked away. And just like that, Ethan was alone, standing outside my door. I didn't open it. I didn't speak. I just watched. He stood there for a long moment, breathing hard, like he was trying to decide what version of himself to become next. Then, he knocked. Once. Twice. Harder. Sophia, he called, voice shifting again. Softer now, pleading. I know you're in there. Just talk to me. I said nothing. I just need my stuff, he continued. You don't have to be like this. My hands curled into fists at my sides. His stuff. He had stayed over maybe a dozen times. A toothbrush. A hoodie he forgot once. Nothing that justified this. Nothing that explained the lie he was building outside my door. You're being unreasonable, he said, the softness cracking. You can't just lock me out of my own place. My own place. The words landed like something rotten. That was when I picked up my phone and called building security. Calmly. Clearly. I explained everything. By the time they arrived, Ethan had already shifted again. Now he was pacing, muttering under his breath, trying the handle like maybe it would magically open if he wanted it badly enough. When security turned the corner, he straightened instantly, like a child caught doing something they couldn't explain. Sir, one of the guards said firmly, you need to step away from this door. I live here, Ethan said quickly. No, you don't, I whispered under my breath. The guard didn't argue. Do you have proof of residence? Ethan hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. No, the guard said. Then you need to leave. Ethan's composure snapped. She's stealing my things, he said loudly. I'm going to sue her. The guard didn't react. Sir, you're being asked to leave the property. Ethan looked at the door one last time. At me, though he couldn't see me. And something in his face hardened into something I didn't recognize anymore. This isn't over, he said again. Then he turned and walked away. Security followed him until he was out of the building. And just like that, the hallway went quiet. I stood there for a long time after, listening, waiting, half expecting him to come back. He didn't, but the silence didn't feel like relief. It felt like the pause before something worse. Friday was quiet, too quiet. No calls, no messages, no unexpected visitors. I should have known. People like Ethan don't stop. They regroup. Saturday afternoon, my phone rang. It was my mom. Her voice was confused. Honey, she said, are you engaged? I blinked. What? There was a pause. Then my dad's voice came on the line too. She sent us a card, he said, a thank you note for welcoming her into the family. My stomach dropped. Who? Sophia, my mom said gently. Ethan? Of course. Of course he did. I sat down slowly. What did it say? There was the sound of paper shuffling. Then my mom started reading. It says, she's so grateful to be joining our family, that you two are planning a spring wedding, that you're starting a business together and she's excited for your future. Each word felt more surreal than the last. I broke up with him over a week ago, I said flatly. Silence. Then, what, my dad said. He sent you a business proposal too, my mom added quietly, asking if we'd like to invest. I closed my eyes, a slow, exhausted exhale slipping out of me. He had found their address from a Christmas card, used it, weaponized it, pulled them into something they didn't even understand. I'll handle it, I said. Just don't respond to anything he sends. Forward it to me. We hung up a few minutes later, but the damage lingered. Because it wasn't just them. Within an hour, my phone lit up again. My cousin. Then another. Then an aunt I barely spoke to. All variations of the same thing. Is this real? Are you getting married? What is this business? One message made me laugh despite everything. Your ex just offered me a friends and family discount on a boutique that doesn't exist. I stared at the screen. Then I did the only thing left to do. I called my parents' local police department, added another report, another layer, another line in the growing pattern of something that was no longer just harassment, but delusion. Sunday morning, I woke up to emails. Dozens of them. Loan offers, credit card promotions, financial services. At first, I thought it was spam, until I realized they were all new. All signed up within hours, using my email. My name, petty, annoying, but not dangerous, not compared to everything else. I started unsubscribing, marking as spam, cleaning it up piece by piece. And then I saw something that made my stomach twist. A shipping confirmation from a luxury fashion retailer. I opened it. $3,000 worth of designer bags. Ordered under my name, shipped to my address, but paid with a credit card that wasn't mine. I went cold. This wasn't petty. This was a setup. I called the company immediately. Explained everything. They investigated quickly, faster than I expected. Within minutes, they confirmed the card used had already been flagged as stolen. The billing address didn't match. The order was fraudulent. They canceled it, flagged it, escalated it. I thanked them, hung up, and sat there in silence, because the plan was obvious. The packages would arrive. Ethan would be waiting. Take them. Disappear. And somehow, some way, it would come back to me. Except there was one thing he hadn't accounted for. He wasn't allowed near the building anymore. And I had already warned management. For the first time in days, I felt something close to control. Monday morning, it all detonated. My phone rang just after 9 a.m. HR. I answered immediately. Their tone was careful, measured. We received an anonymous complaint, the woman said, with attached screenshots. My grip tightened around the phone. What kind of screenshots? A conversation, she said, between you and someone claiming to be your partner. It appears to show you promising financial support for a business and then withdrawing it, causing emotional distress and financial harm. I actually laughed, a short, sharp sound I couldn't stop. They're fake. We suspected as much, she said gently. The writing style doesn't match your previous communications, and the dates don't align with your travel records. Of course they didn't, because none of it was real. Just like the engagement, just like the marriage, just like the life Ethan was trying to build out of lies. We still have to document it, she continued, but we recommend you consider legal action. This is escalating. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, because for the first time, someone else had said it out loud. Not just me, not just my instincts. Reality. This was escalation. This was intentional. This was dangerous. That afternoon, I called a lawyer. And by evening, I had a plan. Because whatever this had been before, it wasn't that anymore. And I was done waiting for it to get worse. By Tuesday morning, everything in my life had been reduced to documentation. Not memories, not emotions, evidence, dates, times, screenshots, call logs, emails, statements, patterns. My lawyer's office smelled faintly like coffee and printer ink, the kind of place where people came when things had already gone too far. He didn't interrupt me once as I walked him through everything. The cafe, the loan, the workplace confrontation, the attempted credit access, the impersonation, the break-in attempt, the packages, the fake messages to HR. When I finished, he leaned back slightly in his chair, steepling his fingers. This isn't just harassment, he said calmly. This is a pattern. I nodded, because that word, pattern, was exactly what I had been feeling without fully naming. He's escalating, my lawyer continued, and he's using multiple angles, financial, personal, reputational. That strengthens your case. So what do? I asked. We file for an emergency protective order. The words settled over me slowly. Heavy. Final. Necessary. We filed that afternoon. Every piece of evidence organized, labeled, attached. There was something strangely grounding about it, like taking chaos and forcing it into structure. Like saying, this happened and it matters. The hearing was scheduled faster than I expected. 3 days later. Friday morning. I didn't sleep much the night before. Not out of fear, but anticipation. The kind that sits in your chest and refuses to quiet down. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined. Quieter, too. When my name was called, I stood, hands steady despite everything that had led me there. Ethan wasn't there. That didn't surprise me. People like him rarely show up when reality becomes official. But someone else did. Patricia. Of course. She sat rigidly in the second row, her expression tight with controlled outrage, like this entire situation was an inconvenience she was being forced to endure rather than something her son had created. When the judge entered, everything shifted. There's something about that kind of authority, calm, impersonal, unmoved by emotion, that cuts through chaos instantly. My lawyer presented everything. Clean, precise, undeniable. The timeline, the evidence, the pattern. Every moment Ethan had tried to push past a boundary I had clearly set. When he finished, the judge looked down at the file for a long moment. Then, "Is the respondent present?" she asked. Silence. "No, Your Honor," my lawyer replied. Patricia stood up suddenly. "She's too upset to be here," she said quickly. "This woman has ruined her life." The judge didn't even look up. "Ma'am," she said evenly, "you are not a party to this case. Sit down." Patricia hesitated, then slowly lowered herself back into her seat, her lips pressed into a thin line. The judge finally looked up. Her gaze moved to me, then back to the file. "Based on the evidence presented," she said, her voice calm but firm, "this court finds a clear pattern of harassment and attempted fraud." The words landed with quiet finality. "The temporary protective order is granted. Duration, 2 years." Date. Just like that. It was done. I didn't feel victorious. Not the way people expect. No rush of triumph, no overwhelming relief. Just stillness. Like something that had been vibrating under my skin for weeks had finally gone quiet. But the story didn't end there, because consequences have a way of arriving on their own schedule. And when they do, they rarely knock. It started with the car. The BMW. The one Ethan had bought with the original loan, the one I wasn't supposed to know about. Repossessed. 3 missed payments. Gone. I found out through Vanessa, who texted me a single message. "Thought you'd want to know. It's unraveling." Then came the business, or what had been presented as a business. The supplier, the one tied to the exclusive opportunity, cut ties completely. Apparently, word travels fast when someone starts getting associated with fraud reports. No supplier wants risk like that. No partner wants instability. No one wants to be pulled into someone else's collapse. The debt surfaced next. Not just Vanessa's $5,000. Not just the loan. Multiple people. Friends. Acquaintances. Even a former roommate, Aaliyah, who reached out to me directly. Her message was blunt. "He owes me 3 months of rent. He's been telling people you're still together and funding everything." I stared at that line for a long time. Not because it surprised me, because it didn't. Then, unexpectedly, Liam reached out. The same Liam who had cornered me at the gym. His message was short, direct, and for the first time, honest. "I owe you an apology." I almost didn't respond. But curiosity won again. He told me Ethan had been telling everyone a completely different story. That I had been controlling, financially manipulative, that I had promised to support him, then abandoned him when he tried to succeed. Liam had believed it, until Ethan asked him to co-sign a loan. When Liam refused, Ethan turned on him, called him jealous, accused him of not supporting his vision. That was the moment Liam realized something was wrong. Not with me, with Ethan. "I'm sorry," he wrote. "I shouldn't have approached you like that." I read the message, then typed a simple reply. "Thank you for telling me. Nothing more." Because some apologies don't need to become conversations. The last update came quietly. The kind that drifts in through secondhand conversations and mutual connections. Ethan had moved back in with Patricia. Full-time job at a call center. The loan, defaulting. Credit, destroyed. The boutique never existed beyond a name and a few curated posts. But even then, even after everything, he was still telling people the same story. That I had sabotaged him. That I had refused to believe in him. That I had cost him everything. And maybe, at one point, hearing that would have hurt. Maybe I would have wanted to defend myself, to correct the narrative, to make people understand the truth. But somewhere along the way, that need disappeared. Because the truth doesn't need to chase people. It waits. And eventually, it catches up. About a month after everything settled, I ran into Vanessa at a coffee shop. She looked different, less polished, more real. "You know he's telling people you're back together, right?" she said, almost casually. I stared at her. "What?" She shrugged, posting old photos. New captions, saying you're working things out, that you're going into business together. I let out a quiet breath. "There's a restraining order." She smiled faintly. "I don't think reality is his strongest skill." Neither did I. But by then, it didn't matter. Because my life had moved on. Quietly, steadily, in ways that felt real. I started seeing someone new. Not immediately, not recklessly, but slowly, carefully. The first time we went out, he reached for the check, and then paused. "Do you want to split it?" he asked. Simple, normal, respectful. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it felt unfamiliar in the best possible way. Later, he mentioned he was saving for a certification program. I asked about it. He pulled out his phone and showed me a spreadsheet. Actual numbers, timelines, backup plans. No pressure, no expectations, no hidden agenda. Just responsibility. And for a second, I felt something in my chest loosen. A knot I hadn't realized I was still carrying. Looking back now, I can see it clearly. The signs, the small things I ignored. The way Ethan would forget his wallet. The way he framed basic accountability as a lack of support. The way love was always something I had to prove, usually at my own expense. That moment in the cafe, it wasn't the beginning of the end. It was the moment I finally saw the truth. My credit is still protected. The restraining order is still active. My family forwards anything they receive straight to my lawyer. My building has his photo at the front desk. My gym knows not to let him, or anyone connected to him, inside. Was I harsh? Maybe. But when someone shows you they see you as a solution to their problems instead of a partner in their life, believing them the first time is not cruelty. It's self-respect. That loan, the one he wanted me to co-sign, would have destroyed me. My credit, my future, my ability to build anything stable, and all of it would have been wrapped in the illusion of love. Damn. If you loved me, that's what he said. And maybe that was the most honest thing he ever gave me, because it told me exactly what his version of love looked like. I'm just grateful. I loved myself enough to say no.